Korai, K-O-R-A-I. 14 of these have survived. That's a lot to survive all the way back from then, because then the Golden Age didn't even get rolling by that time. This is the archaic pre-Golden Age. 14 of these have survived because they were later discovered and used as fill after the Persian destruction of Athens in 480. They were used to fill in where they were going to build other stuff. Oh, take that old statue and stick in there, and that one, and that one, and that one. 14 of them we've gotten because they didn't care for it. They didn't care for the old style. Put them in the ground, put them under the temple. We need something to build up this area. Put those 14 things here. Among the increasingly varied minor arts of the works of the goldsmiths, seal cutters and others became more refined. The leading elements of Greece still appreciated handsome pottery. Among the increasingly varied minor arts, the works of goldsmiths, seal cutters, and others became more refined, but the leading elements of Greece still appreciated handsome pottery. Corinthian pottery, dominant at the beginning of the 6th century, sank away into sterile repetition of old patterns, and most other local forms of pottery likewise declined. In their place rose ever higher the Athenian styles. Now, I've heard capitalism blamed for this updating of the style of the car, the refrigerator, of your home, your building, your clothes, and capitalism's so damn evil for this. And the Athenian damn potter societies in ancient, we can tell by the record of pottery which pottery was more popular and became more popular eventually. Style was important back then. Capitalism is not to blame for things that are thousands and thousands of years old, like poverty. By 550, Attic black figure ware had replaced Corinthian vases in most markets. We skipped the bit where they talked exactly about what it's all about, but the black figure ware, where they trace red lines for the details, very popular for a long time, and all the other styles. Then, from about 530, Athenian potters produced red figure vases. In these, the figures were left in the basic wash color of the vase, while the rest of the surface was covered with a heavy brown slip, which became black in the skillful firing. As a result, minute details could be picked out on the red figures by black lines. This style of pottery, which flourished on across the classic era, was the most famous ever produced in Greece. Alright, we're done with the archaic era, and we're going to go now quite a few pages down to join in at the Greek world in 500 BC. By the end of the 6th century, the main qualities of Hellenic civilization were well developed and stood in clear contrast to those of the Near East. The fundamental tone of Greek culture was a new achievement for mankind. Everywhere men firmly believed in the ultimate mastery of the gods, but Greek artists, poets, and thinkers now expressed a concept of man which gave him far more dignity. We've seen also that the gods were subject to reality. The gods were subject to the laws of nature and to have been created within whatever laws nature has commanded. Because all these philosophers were looking at substance prior to everything else. Economically, thus, the Greek commonly had an independent place, even though his homeland remained poverty-stricken in contrast to the centers of the Near East. Now, at one point, it's odd to say that because Greece later was home of Athens. No one was richer. But this is like saying in the 1700s, the American colonies were poor as hell. Britain had all kinds of things, factories and stuff, you know. But continuing, the dead weight of ancestral custom, which bound men together tightly into units and governed them by superstition, was only slightly less powerful in Greece than in the Near East. Right? He says only slightly, but then it pops into our head, let's see, what do you mean only slightly? Is the most important note about Greece. He says, but the qualification is all important. That's right, very true. So they're just a little less religious, a little bit less credulous, a little more rational, but that is important. Very important. It is the story of Greece. If a completely dispassionate observer had calculated the chances for further advance in Greece as against those of the Near East in 500 BC, he might nonetheless have awarded the palm to the latter. Firmly organized in one imperial state, the Near East had a much older, more deeply rooted, polished civilization. The Greeks, on the other hand, were split into many jealously independent political units. Internally, they tended to factional and class strife bullshit. Intellectually, as well as socially, the spirit of competition and mutual criticism was rife. Now, it wasn't class strife, it was people who used the state to take things from other people, and those people rose up periodically, and in Greece they rose up maybe because they understood it more or something, because they were more understanding of the situation, who knows why, but they rose up against things being taken from them. It has nothing to do with class strife. It's silly. Anyways, outwardly amazing as the Greek victory over the forthcoming Persian assault was to be, it was only another testimony to that vigor, and the Greeks were to go on after defeating the Persians to expand their culture to even greater and more widely attractive attainments. After the Golden Age of Greece ends, or as the Golden Age of Greece ends, or marking the Golden Age of Greece's ending, the end of the Golden Age, was Alexander the Great. We're going to look into this a bit. Alexandria, city of the Western mind. It's by Theodore Vrettos, Vretos, and this was published in 2001. And we're going to look into Alexandria later on, though. We still have to get through the wars with Persia and the Golden Age. Next, we will go on to the war of the Greeks and the Persians in Star. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're now going to embark upon the best part of our journey. We are going to go into the Golden Age, 500 to 300 AD or BC or so, and we're going to go into Star and get a bit about the Greeks and the Persians as they meet. But first, there's a wonderful quote that I wanted to get out of Botsford and Robinson, Hellenic History. It's this one, remember? And it's a quote, I couldn't remember who had said this. I thought it was Pliny. I mentioned it earlier. And it was actually Aeschylus who said this. Fantastic quote. I love it. So I'll just read that here to get us into the spirit of the clash with the Persians, because that's what we're going to be studying at length next, is the battles at Marathon and Salamis. So Aeschylus, who fought at Marathon and Salamis, was also able to catch the fundamental difference between the Oriental and the Occidental. Oriental means east, Occidental means west. In the Persians, which is a valuable eyewitness account of the Battle of Salamis, the Persian queen asks a question. Now this is Aeschylus' play. And the Persian queen asks a question to which no one has found the answer. And the question is, what is this Athens of which all men speak? But perhaps the answer was best spoken by the ancient playwright himself, when he set the quality of Athens in the democratic spirit of her people, and let a Persian give his queen the incomprehensible response. So here's the response the queen gets. What is this Athens of which all men speak? They bow to no man, and are no man's slaves. That is what Athens is. So, with that little note to make the hair on the back of your neck stand up, we're going to go to Star, chapter 13, the Greeks against the Persians. Now it mentions that the achievements of Greece in this century are amazing. It's almost impossible to list them all. It says, few people have done so much in the space of 2 or 3 generations. Impressive in itself, the classic era was also a seminal influence for all later Western civilization. He mentions the first true science was born in this period, the science of medicine. Interesting that he qualifies it as the first true science, and there are many doctors today who say it is still an art. It is not yet science. The first science, and